Well, welcome to another Bible Truth broadcast. I'm Evangelist Tom Gillum. I'm an itinerant evangelist that believes in expositional preaching. I like to do it line upon line, precept upon precept. I like to do it in a serious form, I like to do it with enthusiasm. It's a joy to have you here today on the broadcast. Hope you'll have a Bible handy, a notebook, something to write with. You'll find our text today in John's Gospel and chapter number 10. We have now for several broadcasts been looking at a little word that John mentions 22 times in his writings, and it is the little word witness. It has to do of testifying to something one has seen or one has heard. 22 is the number of illumination or light, shedding light upon a subject. And I thought it was interesting, this little word witness. We get our little word martyr from it. Martyrio is the word. We get our word martyr. So it is one who is willing to testify or point out what they have seen or heard or shed light upon a subject, even at the cost of their life. As we have looked at this subject, we look first of all that John the Baptist gave a witness about Jesus. On our last broadcast, we began to look at the thought that Jesus gives a witness about Jesus. He's going to turn and point to himself and say, I am. We have already looked that he is the subject of omnipotent sovereignty. He is the great I am. On our last broadcast, we finished up looking that he is the source, and I put in parentheses, the only source of our salvation. Now today, I want to continue to look at these I am statements. He's given a witness now about himself, pointing to himself with these I am statements. I want us to see today in the broadcast that he is the substance of our sanctification. We speak of sanctification, we speak of growth, we speak of becoming like him. Notice one of those statements in John chapter number 10, where we find sanctification's connection. The Bible said in verse 9, I am the door. He's speaking of the entrance into the sheepfold. I am the door. By me, if any man enter in, he shall be saved. Watch the last part of this verse. And shall go in and out and find pasture. That going in and out speaks of growth, speaks of maturity. That pasture word speaks of what the diet would be. We know from the scriptures that the Bible speaks of the sheep eating the grass. He speaks of the milk of the word. Peter says, as newborn babes, desire the sincere milk of the word. I was reminded some time ago in a Sunday school class over in Tennessee. A dear brother brought some thoughts on a study that the CDC had made out of Atlanta on a nursing mother and the milk that she provided for the baby. Told us that the first time she nurses the baby, and if the baby is a preemie baby, the touch of the baby's lips to the mama would tell the mama's body that this is a preemie baby, and her body would begin to produce antibodies of protein that would cause the baby to grow quicker and bigger. If the baby was to go to daycare and come in contact with a germ or an infection that it had never been around, that night, the first time the mother nursed the baby, there would be a warning to the mother's body that it had come in contact with some unidentified germ or infection, and the mother's body would make a antibody to fight that germ. And the next time the mother nursed the baby, those antibodies would be in the milk. I tell you, we have a powerful God. But he says of this book here, he says the Word of God is quick and powerful, sharper than any two-edged sword, pierces even dividing asunder of soul and spirit. Then he makes this statement. He said, "And is a discerner of the thoughts and intents of a man." This book, just like the mother's milk, it can read your mind, read your thoughts. No wonder Jesus said, "I am the door." You can come in and be saved, and then you can go in and out and find pasture. There can be only growth as we enter in to the door of this word, sanctification's connection. But look also at this subject of sanctification's connection in John's Gospel, chapter 15 and verse number 5. He says, "I am the vine, ye are the branches." Oh, at ourselves, we're just an old dead brown stick. But when we have been placed into that vine, we become a living branch. He says in verse number 5, "He that abideth me, and I in him, bringeth forth much fruit." Now listen to this. "For without me, you can do nothing." How can I abide? How can I find myself at home in him? How can I have nourishment and growth through that vine? Listen what he says in chapter 15 and verse 7. "If ye abide in me, and my words abide in you, ye shall ask what you will, and it shall be done unto you." Isn't it amazing? It seems like everywhere we turn in this relationship, in these connections of sanctification, it seems like that the Word of God is of paramount importance in this thing of sanctification and growth. You've still got the Bible there handy, John's Gospel, chapter number 8. May we look, second of all, not at sanctification's connection, but at sanctification's continuance. He says in John chapter 8 and verse number 12, "Then spake Jesus again unto them, saying, I am the light of the world. He that followeth me shall not walk in darkness, but shall have the light of life." Here it was the time of the feast of celebration. The city had lights everywhere. It was the Feast of the Tabernacles. And in the midst of all of these lights, Jesus pointed to himself and he said, "I am the light." There can be no forward movement of which one can see in the light apart from me. No wonder David said that he is a lamp unto my feet, those small daily steps. Then he said he is a light unto my path. We can see afar off. He says also in John chapter 8 and verse 20, "These words spake Jesus in the treasury as he taught in the temple." Here, this light, this illumination is a treasure. Oh, today we walk in the dark if we do not get in the Word of God. As we get in the Word of God, there is supplications, sanctifications, continuance. But I notice also paramount in this thing of continuance is not only to have light. I remember being in Alaska during the dark days. They have colds and they have flu. So many of them have tanning beds where they can get some light, get that vitamin sufficiency for their body. That's why the child of God needs the light of the Word. Also in John chapter 6, verse 35, he said this, Jesus said unto them, "I am the bread of life. He that cometh to me shall never hunger. He that believeth on me shall never thirst. Verse 41, he said, the Jews then murmured at him because he said, I am the bread of life, which came down from heaven. He is putting himself on a higher level than the manna that they were fed. I'm telling you today, there can be no continuance without the light. He said, I am the light. If man is going to exist, he must have food. Jesus said, I am the bread of life that came down from heaven. I am the only sustenance that can cause you to continue in the realms of sanctification. You cannot grow in the Lord. You cannot become like Jesus apart from the light of the Word and the bread of life, that substance we get from the Word of God. Not only do I see sanctification's connection, its continuance, but I see sanctification's companion. John's Gospel, chapter number 10, if you have the scriptures there, verse number 11, he says, I am, pointing to himself, and giving a witness about himself. He says, I am the good shepherd, and the good shepherd giveth his life for the sheep. David said in his psalm, he said, the Lord is my shepherd, he is my companion. And he said, because of that, I shall not want. Pointing to himself, he says, I am the shepherd. He says in verse number 3 of that same chapter, to him the porter openeth. To who? The shepherd. The sheep hear his voice. He calleth his own sheep by name, and leadeth them. The sheep know the voice of the shepherd. They know their companion. They know that through the word of God. He speaks to them. They know it's the shepherd, and they follow him. It says in verse 4, when he putteth forth his own sheep, he goeth before them. The sheep follow him, for they know his voice. And a stranger they will not follow, but will flee from him, for they know not the voice of the stranger. Oh, here today, if there is to be sanctification, if there is to be growth, there must be a connection to that vine. There must be a continuance. There must be light. There must be bread, but there must be a companion. You must know the voice of that shepherd. Peter and John was out there fishing that night. Peter didn't have a clue as it was Jesus on that shoreline. But when Jesus spoke, John said to Peter, he said, Peter, it's the Lord. It's because he had spent so much time close to him. He knew that voice. Jesus giving a witness about Jesus. Well, it's been a joy to have you on the broadcast today. Remind you of our study website, tomgillum.com. Hundreds of Bible studies on there. Hook up to these YouTube broadcasts. Daily devotional, blog through the book of Matthew. tomgillum.com. Come there and study the Word of God with us. We can ever help you with a prayer. You got a burden on your heart, we can help you pray about. You're interested in a meeting, I'm an itinerant evangelist. You can email me at tbgillum@aol.com. Thanks for listening today.